keep it real with ya.
I just went on to the CPTS group, CPTSD, CPTSD group that I'm in, and I saw a post that was literally posted today where they were like, I messed up with my therapist, guys," and I was just like, "Oh God, here we go." Exactly what I'm talking about right now. Um, and they are basically like, when my therapist was gone, I saw another therapist, and now I like that therapist more. And now I feel bad because I betrayed my therapist's trust. And, with the other therapists that I like more, they were letting me, I could be more open with them because I felt like some things my original therapist was judging me for. So I didn't want to open up with them or tell them stuff. And I was just like, I literally had to comment and be like, excuse me, excuse, yeah, okay. Um, you pay them. You pay these guys money. Like, I literally had to be like this is literally what I'm thinking every time I see one of these posts where someone has this weird relationship with their therapist about like, oh, I betrayed my therapist, or oh, I don't feel comfortable seeing my therapist, or I feel bad cuz I didn't go to therapy, or I feel bad cuz I did go to therapy. And I was just like, and every time I see those type of posts, or every time a friend says something like that to me, I always come back to the same point that I made before, which is it's their job to make you feel safe. It's their job to make you feel comfortable being vulnerable with them. So, if they're not doing their job, why are you paying them? Would you pay a plumber to come and break your toilet? Would you pay an electrician to come and rip the lights off your ceiling and then walk out? And then you pay them to come back and do it with the other rooms too. Would you pay a mechanic to take your engine out your car and refuse to put it back in? You wouldn't do that. A therapist is no different. Like, I feel like people are treating their therapist like they're romantic partners or something. If you feel like your therapist is judging you because of something you chose to do with your life, even if they really do have an issue with it, they should never make you feel that they have an issue with it. That's the thing. Because yes, they are human. Yeah, they're going to have opinions and feelings. But if they're professionals, then their feelings would not be hurt because they know that they're there for you and what helps you. Um, the other thing that I was going to talk about is the whole trauma informed therapist thing. There's a lot of therapists out there who are calling themselves trauma informed just because they know trauma exists. See what I'm saying? That's not the same thing. So I'm moving away from saying trauma informed and trying to say more trauma trained, because there are people who are commenting, there are people who are posting in these groups about how their therapist is supposed to be trauma informed but told them that their trauma was too much for them. What? And made them feel like their trauma was too heavy. No trauma is too heavy for a trauma trained therapist. And see, what I like about my therapist, and even my last therapist, I like about both of them, is my therapist has worked with victims of all types of abuse at all types of ages. My therapist has worked with psychopaths. My therapist has worked with narcissists. My therapist has seen the worst of the worst. And I'm still apparently in her top 5 in terms of trauma. But anyway, this, I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. Like it's validating, but it's also like, wow, of everybody. like, but she's seen it all. And that's the type of therapist that I want. When I'm looking for a trauma trained therapist, I need to know that they have a background actively dealing with people going through it. Like, just saying that you're trauma informed don't mean nothing to me. My friend, she went through multiple therapists who were trauma informed. Literally, one of them, the first session, tried to make her spill all of her deepest traumas to her. In the first session to me is a consultation. We trying to see if we gonna match. Do not sit me down in the first session and be like, tell me all your traumas. I need to know that if I'm going to work with you. No, you don't need to know a damn thing. Ooh, you don't need to know a thing about my trauma until I'm like 6 months in, if I feel like talking about it. You know what I mean? Not everybody wants to cut themselves open and give you all of this. And then you turn out to be like not able to handle the stuff that they dealing with. It's not okay for therapists to do that. It's not okay for a therapist to make you tell them your trauma. A therapist should never say, "Tell me your traumatic history." They should never do that. If they do that, I don't fully believe that they have work experience or training in trauma. I feel like it's trendy. A lot of people are talking about trauma these days, and I feel like there are therapists out there who are trying to put themselves out there, trying to get clients, trying to make a name for themselves. And so they want to say, "Oh, yeah, I'm trauma informed," because you know that trauma exists. And you know that by saying you're trauma informed, you're going to get more clients because we've now become aware as a culture, as a society, that trauma is pretty freaking, um, I forgot the word. Trauma is everywhere. So many people have trauma. People have racial trauma. People have, family trauma. People have trauma from relations, personal relationships. People have childhood trauma. And like a therapist might be trained and they might have only dealt with one type of trauma. So you have to be really, really picky when you're going to them because a therapist will say on their bio, "Yeah, I'm trauma informed." Okay, what's your experience with trauma? Some of them won't know how to answer that question because they don't have experience with trauma. If I was to go to my therapist right now and be like, "Okay, I saw you said you're trauma informed. What's your experience with trauma? What have you done in that space?" My therapist would be like, "Well, I've worked with the homeless population. I've worked with victims of violence. I've worked with children." Like my therapist will tell you some stuff without telling you some stuff that will have you being like, "Oh, she the real deal." You know what I mean? They should be able to answer that question. If you come into that session and your session is anything other than "tell me about yourself, tell me what your goals for therapy are," this person is not really knowing what they're doing. And it's very frustrating for me because trauma is so prevalent. Prevalent is the word I was looking for. Trauma is so prevalent in all cultures, in all societies, but in American culture especially, like people are waking up to the fact that that's a very real thing. And more people have been seeking therapy since COVID. And you have all these therapists out here who are suddenly like, "Oh yeah, let me get some clients and let me lie and say that I'm trauma informed." Or even if you are trauma informed, what does that even mean? Like, what does trauma informed mean? Because you could be like, "I once had a client who was in a car accident, so I'm trauma informed." That's not the same. You could be like, "My client had a traumatic birth experience, so I'm trauma informed." That is a trauma. Does that mean that you are capable of dealing with people with racial trauma? No. I had a shorter list, but now my list has gotten longer because my therapist, she just raised my expectations. And I'm hearing all this nonsense about what these therapists are doing to people. And I'm like, I got to keep my expectations high because when I can't see my current therapist no more, that next therapist better be top notch. So, in terms of me, what I look for in a therapist, I prefer a therapist who isn't black. I know some people, if your issue is race and racial trauma, then you want someone of the same race as you. I don't have a lot of issues with racial trauma. So I prefer a therapist that isn't black. Um, I also prefer a therapist that is not religious, or at least they could either be, atheist, or they could have a religion but it's not a part of their practice. If a therapist tells me they're a Christian based practice, I don't go. I want a trauma trained therapist, and that means that they have actual work experience working with people with all types of different traumas. Not that somebody got in a car accident one time, not that someone got mugged one time, because CPTSD is very different than somebody who had one bad experience in their entire life. I need to know your trauma training and your experience. If you can't answer that question, I'm moving on. I prefer therapists to be women or at least AFAB. I prefer them to be in their 30s. Recently realized I prefer a therapist who either doesn't have kids, or I don't know that they have kids. Why do I say this? Is because I feel like once people have kids, they kind of get into mom mode or dad mode, and I have parent triggers. So if you're somebody who outside of work, you're mom all the time. I feel like sometimes you might come into work and be mom there too. And I can't do that because then you're going to trigger me. So I don't want to be triggered by my therapist. Now if they're able to separate that professionally, by all means, but I'm just figuring out that I like that my therapist is child free. Um, and I don't know if she wants to have kids or not. I'm just saying. But yeah, so I like that they're in their 30s. I like that they're not black. I like that they're mostly secular. Spiritual's okay, obviously. Um, I like that they don't have kids, so they don't have that mom energy about them that can trigger me sometimes. I like that they are trauma trained and have dealt with the worst of the worst, some stuff that would make me feel bad about the stuff that I be complaining about. Um, I also like that my therapist is queer friendly, all queer friendly. A therapist being a lesbian does not mean that they're going to be okay with non-binary or trans people. A therapist who's okay with trans people does not automatically mean that they're okay with ace people. My therapist is okay with all types of sexual orientations, and I like that about them. They even have a pride group. They don't run it, but it's their office has a pride group. Um, so it's like I like that they're open to that. My therapist is neurodivergent. She has ADHD. I didn't know that about her. I guess I could have guessed, but she never said anything about it until recently. But by her having that experience, is open to talking about people who might be autistic, um, or might have ADHD or OCD or anything like that. Um, so I really, really like that about her. I would also say, and I don't know if this is a requirement or not, but I think it really helps to have a therapist who also has PTSD. I know we get real specific. Like this is not something you would know within the first several months or even a year of seeing your therapist. But I think that really helps her kind of like be open and understanding about the stuff that I deal with. That she also has that as a diagnosis. So I think that's very good too. So I've talked to some people who they are like, let's say you're a black woman or a black non-binary person, you have a lot of issues of racial trauma. You want a therapist who is also a black non-binary person or a black queer person. You want a therapist who is neurodivergent. You want a therapist who um is queer in some way. Maybe they're trans, maybe they are um gay, maybe they're bi. You want a therapist who's more social justicey. Some people like the social justice type therapist. I personally don't, but some people like that. Some people have a specific religion that they want their therapist to be a part of that religion. That's totally okay, and it's very fair of you to come in and say, I want to see a Christian therapist. I want to see a Muslim therapist. I want to see a Jewish therapist. It's very fair to come in and say, I want to see a therapist who deals with romantic relationships. I want to see a family therapist. You know, I want to see somebody who's trained in dealing with children or you know what I mean? Like it's okay to have standards. It's okay to be picky because not every therapist has the exact same training. That's why a lot of them are only licensed in specific states. Not every therapist has had the same training. There's a million different ways to train a therapist out there. Now, I will say a lot of them should have the same training in terms of things like confidentiality and everything, but there's a lot of therapists who will tell stuff that a teenager told them to their parents. And it's not a situation where it needed to be told. And they'll break that patient's trust. So therapists get different types of training. There are therapists who are only trained in cognitive behavioral therapy. There are therapists who are only trained in EMDR. There are therapists who are only trained in family counseling. There's a lot of different types of therapists, and that means there's a lot of different types of training for therapists. So you want to make sure when you're going to somebody, you know what it is that you want out of that person, the type of relationship you want, and the type of therapy you want to do. So that when you come into that consultation, that first session when you first meet them, where you filling out paperwork and stuff, when you come into that, you can articulate, this is what I want from you. Can you give me that? And a good therapist will appreciate you doing that because they'll be like, oh, I don't have to guess what my patient needs. They're telling me. And if you come in and say, I want to do EMDR, and they say, I'm not trained in EMDR, let me recommend you some people who are, great. You just saved so much money because now you're going to go to the EMDR person. If you come in and you say, I'm on a spiritual journey and I want to talk to a spiritual therapist who's going to help me on that, and they say I'm Baptist Christian, you just saved yourself thousands of dollars just right there. You know what I mean? And it's not like they're going to tell you their entire, history and background on day one, but you also shouldn't tell them your entire history and background on day one. Like, if I was to go to a brand new therapist, I would come in and I would be asking questions. Do you have trauma training? Yes. What type of trauma training? Do you have experience dealing with neurodivergent people? Yes. What type of neurodivergent people? Are you accepting of the queer community? All of them, including them sexualities you don't fully understand yet. Yes, I am. Okay. Like, I would go down the list with them, and then I will say, these are the issues that I have, and these are the things that I want to work on. Can you help me with those things? Or let's make a plan for how we're going to tackle these issues that I'm dealing with. And just, I know that my friend was like, you know that not everyone's organized like this, right? Like, not everyone's able to get hyper specific about the things that they want to do. And I understand that. And that's why I ask y'all, like, take notes, write it down, rewatch my videos so that you can empower yourself to walk into that therapy session, not as a scared little rabbit or gerbil or whatever them little things is that run away when you get near them. You walk in there with your head held high because you know what you want, and don't let them tell you what you want. If you come in and say, I want to do EMDR, and they say, I don't do that, but you need to do XYZ, you don't know what I need. I just met you. I know what I want. And that's really what it's about. A good therapist will help you get to what you need, but you start with what you want. So that's all I wanted to talk about. That's all I want to talk about with you guys today. It just was bothering me how many people are sharing these horrible, horrible experiences with therapists. And therapists, they're not, there's going to be bad therapists out there. We can't stop that. But what we can do is be informed ourselves and walk into that therapy session ready to tell them what's going to happen, what you going to do and what you not going to do. So I hope that this video helps. Um, Sorry, it wasn't. I try to make them more YouTube friendly. When you get 10 things to avoid when you see a therapist, and I just don't talk that way. I just don't talk that way. But I hope this was helpful. Please share your experiences in the comments below or in the Discord if you want to be a little more private. Some people have been, messaging me directly on Discord to talk about stuff, and that's totally cool too. I will validate you. I will tell you my experiences. Because you guys, you all deserve to have a therapist, first of all, but you all deserve to have a good therapist who's going to make you feel good, who's actually going to help you with your issues. And I just can't stand the fact that so many people are wasting thousands of dollars with these ain't shit therapists. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, guys. Like I always say, eat your food, drink your drinks, water, drink water. um Take your naps, snuggle your cat. Sadie's on my lap. Morticia's back here doing whatever. Oh no, her. Morticia's back here doing whatever. There she is. Hold on. Let me point. Let me try to point. I can't do it right. Okay, here we go. There's Morticia. um, but just take care of yourselves because you deserve it, and no one's gonna do it for you, unfortunately. Um, like I said, if you want to support me, as this video is most likely going to be demonetized, you can support me on Coffee. Just go throw a few dollars my way. Any amount is more than I made from any single video, honestly. And join the Discord. Also gonna have my Instagram down there. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, I am posting pictures of gluten-free food and pictures of my cats. It's not a specific type of page. It's really just whatever I feel like posting. So if you down with keeping up with that, then also follow me on Instagram. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.